Right. Now, you have a conservative view. A lot of people would look back, when Margaret Thatcher died, there were people in the North that, I've never heard anyone celebrating the death of a British leader so much. She was hated for breaking these unions and for the trade groups and for the way I guess it used to be. Whereas you're saying those were times that weren't good for the country, that we needed to get over those practices.
That, by the way, was probably one of the most disgraceful things I've ever seen, and probably most of those people that were demonstrating in the streets or celebrating the death of Margaret Thatcher never knew her, were probably not even alive when she was first elected leader of the Conservative Party and Prime Minister in 1979, and have based their views on prejudice and not on fact. The one thing I would also say, and I think that this is what makes me most troubled about it, is and it's something that should concern us all, is that I suspect people will behave in exactly the same way when Tony Blair eventually dies. This lack of deference is something that I certainly understand needed to come about, of natural deference, but that doesn't necessarily mean, in fact it doesn't mean, I take back the word necessarily, it doesn't mean that you should not give respect to people. And after all, neither Tony Blair or Mrs. Thatcher were dictators. They were democratically elected. Democratically elected on three occasions, surpassing the record of Lord Liverpool, in Mrs. Thatcher's case. It is, without doubt, a marvellous place to be, Britain, or anywhere else that is free and democratic. And it's wonderful that people can shout and protest and oppose. But I don't think that you do that based on prejudice. We all know what happens when prejudices advance. That's what the Second World War was about.
What do you remember about Margaret Thatcher?
I think I probably remember most about her the things that were not commonly associated with her, and that was just a sense of enormous kindness to others, and a compassion that would never be seen by the screens of the nation. I mean, I remember this one particular story told to me by Michael Colvin, for whom I worked, who had a daughter who worked for Margaret Thatcher in opposition. So this shows you that the way in which she was behaving then was something that was just, as it were, natural, empirical. She had a terrible week. Most weeks, I think, for the leader of the opposition in politics is pretty terrible. And she'd been overseas and came back, and there was a crisis of some kind brewing. Mrs. Thatcher wasn't interested in the crisis. She'd remembered that Amanda, her diary secretary, had gone into hospital to have a baby, and her first thought was about Amanda and the baby, and she went straight to the hospital. I mean, I think that shows to me something that wasn't commonly associated with her.
Did you see the movie about her? I did.
And
What was that like to watch, and did you think there were accurate parts
Well, I
of that?
remember too. I mean, I remember. Just before I went to go, I said to Leon Britton, who served as Home Secretary under Margaret Thatcher, as Secretary of State for Trade and Industry under Margaret Thatcher, and as Chief Secretary to the Treasury under Margaret Thatcher. So his entire political career was made by one woman. And I said to Leon, I'm going to go and see the film. And he said, "Oh, why on earth would you want to go and do that? We've all lived through it." And I thought to myself, that could mean that he'd had enough of her and didn't want to revisit the Thatcher Downing Street years. Or it could have meant that he thought no film could do justice to Mrs. Thatcher. I will leave it in the balance as to what his intentions might have been in that remark. But I came away from having seen it thinking what a terrible depiction of Mrs. Thatcher and her period in office, how trivial it was.
It's a movie.
And it is, but I mean, I think that this is where, going back to your earlier question about history, it has a duty, first of all, to be historically accurate. And it was, in many cases, wanting in that respect. So, for example, I mean, to open the movie with Mrs. Thatcher in a corner shop buying milk and a newspaper was just so far removed from reality.
Right. So the dementia and the Alzheimer's theme, you didn't think was a great way of remembering those periods. That makes sense.
Absurd.
Let me ask you, what is the son of Jamaican immigrants, a black man, doing writing speeches for the Conservative Party of Britain for people like that? To watch the rest of this fascinating interview, click on the link below and go to londonrealacademy.com. There you can sign in with your social media, log in and watch the rest of the episode for free, along with all of our episodes on London Real, my webinars, and all of our premium content, all located over at londonrealacademy.com. So click on the link below, you'll be directed there and you can watch the rest of this fascinating interview, and I'll see you there.